We are live here on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel Thursday afternoon with some major breaking news. And that is that the nation's #1 overall prospect, five-star quarterback prospect, Arch Manning, has sent shockwaves across college football and the recruiting world when he announced his commitment to Texas football Thursday morning. I'm Taylor Estes, Horns 24/7 managing editor, and I'm joined over here by Horns 24/7 recruiting analyst Mike Roach. And Mike, let's just get down to business here. Arch Manning took an official visit to Texas over the weekend. It was his fourth visit to Austin. You reported over at Horns 24/7 all week. The visit went well. Texas has been in good spot with Arch Manning, but things were with this has been played really close to the chest. What was it that has led to Arch Manning, making this decision and really sending shockwaves through college football?
Over the last year, a lot of people have asked me the question, like, what does Texas have to do to get Arch Manning committed? And I think that the biggest thing I always said was they need to keep running the race they've been running. They need to keep building the relationship. They don't have to do anything crazy. They don't have to blow out a visit or anything like that. I think this commitment was a year and a half process of building strong relationships, doing all sorts of things like that, and being able to put themselves in a place where they could finish with him. Getting the last visit, I think, spoke to those relationships. AJ Milwee, the quarterback coach of Texas, did a phenomenal job in this recruitment. And I can't, the only thing I can really hang their hat on at this point is building those relationships and getting him to the point where he trusts the direction of the program and quarterback development under this staff.
You had Arch obviously went to an unofficial visit to Texas during spring, and you and Hudson over at Horns 24/7, had great coverage of that. But it seemed like Texas took a little bit more of a low key approach and not kind of laying out the red carpet, having all the guns and whistles blowing when he's on campus or some massive hoopla around him. How much did that play an impact, do you think, with the type of kid that Arch Manning is with his personality?
Yeah, he's not a big hoopla kid. He's not a kid that wants a lot of the attention. He's pretty mellow, pretty humble, pretty laid back, and I think the low key approach works for him. Like, he just wants to come into town, see some things, have a good time. He doesn't need all the bells and whistles. He doesn't need a bunch of cars and flashy pictures and all those sorts of things. I think he's really bonded with a couple players on the team. I think the MVP of this is walk-on defensive back Michael Taft, who's been kind of his unofficial host on every visit and was his official host on his official visit. He's the guy, along with some other kids from that Westlake area, that have really bonded with Arch and I think made him feel at home in Austin.
What do you think it was about that? I know that you've talked a little bit about the community where Arch is from, and at Isidore Newman, might be a little bit more similar to Westlake. Is that kind of where you think that connection was, or was there more, depth to it than that?
Yeah, demographically, the area Arch is from is not that different from Westlake, and I think that that they just connect. They come from similar type of backgrounds. They, you tend to connect with people who you're alike with, and so I think that was a big key in it. But I also think that there are a lot of kids from Isidore Newman who have come to Texas as just students, and I think that they've kind of in the same way connected with the Westlake kids, and so there's a lot of crossover there. And it's been big for Texas and for them to be able to have that natural link, because the coaches can recruit as much as possible, but when you have a group of players or kids your age that can make you feel like, okay, this is the place for me, this is where I'm comfortable, I think that's big. I think that's a huge part of recruiting that gets overlooked a lot.
All right, before we get to what this means for Texas football in the future, let's talk about what this means for the 2023 recruiting class for Texas. I think that there's been a lot of talk around Arch Manning's commitment or recruitment before he committed that whenever he does make his decision, there's going to be several dominoes that kind of fall in place in line after that. With Texas being, on the winning side of this recruitment, what do you see as some of the main domino effects that could come after Arch Manning committed to Texas?
I think one I'm certainly watching right now is Jonte Cook, the five-star wide receiver from DeSoto. who has been close with Arch, has been talking to him behind the scenes. Texas has been a favorite in Jonte Cook's recruitment, regardless. He's coming in this weekend, moved his official visit up already, and I think that that's one that if it doesn't happen this weekend, could potentially happen soon after. You look at some other skill players in the class, like Jonah Wilson at wide receiver, Mikael Harrison Pilot, who visited last week and spent a lot of time with Arch on that trip. And then you look at running back. I think Cedric Baxter is a guy that Texas has been gunning for, and now you can go to him and say, okay, now we have the top quarterback in the country. You can get the line to surround him, and even on the defensive side of the ball, you can start building with elite prospects like Anthony Hill and Javian Taviano, saying, we've got a chance to make a run at number one. So I think it's a really huge development for Texas.
Earlier in the week, there was a big development, not in Texas' favor, with a five-star running back, Ruben Owens, announcing his commitment to Louisville. Texas seemed to be in the race with that. Do you think that this Arch Manning commitment changes anything or the dynamic with Ruben Owens and his commitment with Louisville?
I know Arch and Ruben are close, and so potentially maybe that causes Ruben to reconsider. But like I said, Texas is kind of all in on Cedric Baxter at this point as the second running back take. Now, if Ruben Owens wanted in, would Texas take three running backs? Probably,
Yeah.
But I think that Tashard Choice's eyes are eastward to Florida and to Orlando, where Baxter is.
Okay, that's good to know. And this is actually the second commitment that Texas has landed this week. Ironically, on Sunday, Texas landed the commitment of an Isidore Newman tight end, Arch Manning's teammate and friend Will Randle. How much, when that happened, Mike, I think every Texas fan got like this is going to happen, like really thought that the ball was rolling and landing Arch. How much of their relationship do you feel played a role in this decision?
I think it certainly helps having a friendly face going to Texas with him, a guy that he's played with for the last 7 years, one of his best friends in the world. It was never going to be an automatic thing, but I think for to have a guy like that committed in the class, it certainly makes it a little more helpful. It's another friendly voice in his ear. It's somebody that when he goes to campus, he knows he'll be with, and so I think it was big for Texas to get that done on the front end so they could get this done on the back end.
Now, looking at just Texas recruiting overall, I mean, I do not recall a time where Texas in back-to-back years landed the nation's number one overall prospect, or former, I guess we'll say, with Quinn Ewers, signing with Texas as a transfer, now with Arch Manning. That to me seems like that could cause some monster momentum that will not be slowed in the future. I mean, how big is that, do you think, for Texas recruiting efforts just moving forward in general?
I think it first of all shows the pedigree Steve Sarkisian has as a quarterback developer and a guy that has gotten quarterbacks and passers to the league. I think it's huge for momentum because a lot of times if you're selling one big name quarterback, well, that guy could be gone in 2 years.
Right.
But now you're starting to stack big names upon big names, and I think when you look at it, being able to say, hey, we hope to go right from Quinn Ewers if he's the starter this fall to Arch Manning maybe in the future. We love what we have in Malik Murphy as tools wise. Hudson Card is still there. I mean, it's a good quarterback room. It's one of the good problems to have now. Will probably likely in the portal era lead to some attrition. Yeah, I would assume so. But on the recruiting front, I think it's huge. More so, not just getting the number one guy and the 5 stars, but the brand names that both Quinn Ewers had as a recruit and Arch Manning has as a recruit, I think are both huge.
Yeah, I mean, these are kind of guys that almost seem like unicorns, honestly. I mean, there's like, are they real? Are they fake? I mean, because there's so much attention that followed both of their recruitments. Now let's talk a little bit about what this means for Texas football. With the transfer portal era, I think that a lot of people expect quarterbacks or, guys of the magnitude, the type of recruits like Arch Manning is, to probably expect to start day one once he gets on campus. That doesn't seem to be the case for Arch. You and Hudson Standish talked on the state of recruiting coming out of the weekend of Arch Manning's visit that, he may be somebody that is good to kind of learn a little bit behind Quinn Ewers or whoever the starter may be. What do you like, how do you assess that, how that's going to kind of play out? And can you kind of ease concerns at all with any fans that may think that, if Arch Manning gets on campus, doesn't start day one, he's gone?
No, I think ideally for Arch, he would probably look at a redshirt year, maybe even a little bit of playing time within that year. But I don't think he's a kid that feels like he needs to see the field from day one. I think that he's patient with the process. He's passionate about his development, and I don't think it's necessarily something you want to do. I don't think programs want to start true freshman quarterbacks, and so I think that had he gone to Georgia or somewhere else, it would have probably been the same thing. He'd probably sat for a year at least and kind of learned. So I think that that's always been kind of part of the plan and the reason separation wise why it kind of worked for Texas to, had Texas signed Quinn Ewers on the original trajectory in the 22 class without him ever decommitting and reclassifying, it'd be a lot harder because he'd be coming in right now as a true freshman. He's already got a year of eligibility under his belt, and now can go to the NFL in 2 years if he's worthy of that. And so that actually opens up the timetable way better for Arch.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I've been saying for a while it's hard to consider Quinn Ewers a redshirt freshman because he should be a true freshman, but that decision really has panned out better in Texas' favor. Now, for let's look a little bit more at Arch Manning, the recruit himself. You've been out to see him plenty of times. There's been some questions, I think, from people about the level of competition that he faces in kind of the private school football league that he is in, the New Orleans area. What's your take on him currently, and how, do you think that the level of competition he faces makes him look somehow better or anything like that, like some people have claimed?
I've covered a lot of players that have not played against the best competition, and I'll give you the best example is Bijan Robinson's league in Arizona didn't necessarily play the best competition, but traits matter. What translates matters, and the things we can see from Manning, it's not necessarily what his stats are on Friday nights, but it's the traits we see of him as a passer, his mental game, all those sorts of things. I think they translate in any league. And so, yeah, maybe, the competition is not as good. And would he be putting up similar numbers if he was playing 6A in Texas? I don't know. It's hard to say. But, I think the thing that gets discounted is it's not like Arch is playing for the best team either. I mean, they've got some players. They obviously have Will Randle, but it's not like Isidore Newman is just loaded with prospects either. So I think in those situations you have to look at do they dominate in those leagues, and do the traits they show off translate to the college level?
And you are a recruiting analyst, and I trust everything that you guys say. What would you think? Would you say that his traits are as elite as they should be, or is he kind of one of those guys that people say, like, if his last name was Smith, that he may not be the number one overall prospect in the country?
I really hate that argument because people who say if his last name wasn't Manning, then would he? You can't discount that. That's a big part of the pedigree, is a big part of the picture for him. And I think that growing up around some fantastic quarterback minds, his ability to see the game, and I think that's where he shines most, is mentally. He thinks the game extremely well. And he's got the arm power, he's got the size, he could do all the physical stuff, but mentally, I'm not sure he would have those traits had he not grown up where he grew up. So I don't want to take those out of the equation because I think that's part of what makes him who he is. And yeah, the traits are there. They're not, he's good at everything. He could throw a good ball. He's accurate. He's not a guy that you look at and you're like, wow, he could throw it through a wall like Malik Murphy could, or Quinn Ewers. But I mean, he's got the arm power to get the ball anywhere on the field. It's not like that he's an overwhelming physical freak in any way. It's just he's extremely good at a lot of things, and I believe he's an elite mental player.
One thing I was talking about with somebody earlier in the week with the Manning family, um, the people that had thought, like, maybe, Arch Manning is expecting to be a day one type of starter or something. I feel like with that family history, with their pedigree, their knowledge of the game, I feel like that has probably led to Arch having more of a, level-headed approach when it comes to being a day one starter, because it's so easy now to enter the transfer portal for these guys. And I think it's so easy for fans to jump to the conclusion that that may be the case if the guy doesn't, start day one. How much do you think that having that type of role models in Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, and then Archie Manning, the senior there, do you think that has a lot to do with just kind of his demeanor and his more like level-headed approach to recruiting, aside or in comparison to some of the other top recruits that you see that are totally all about look at me, I want to be the guy day one.
Yeah, and I think throwing his dad, Cooper Manning, as well. They've all been a very strong family and have been very dedicated to handling this the right way. And I think he has. I think he's handled this incredibly for the number. I've seen the pressures of being the number one overall player eat kids alive and just turn them into something they weren't. That hasn't been Arch, and they've limited his, the ways that media can contact him and things like that. He's not big on social. He had his first tweet today. It was a commitment tweet. He's not following anybody on Twitter. Like, he doesn't really get into all that. So they've done a fantastic job just keeping him grounded, keeping him level headed. And really, if you ever go out to Isidore Newman, and I've been out there 3 times, I think now, you just watch him interact with his teammates, and he looks like any other kid. I mean, it's not, he doesn't carry himself in any other way. He just looks like any kid you would see on a high school sideline.
So let's shift the focus real quick here. I know you are. I just want to tell everyone that is listening right now and watching here on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. Mike and Hudson currently are pulled over on the side of the road on their way to College Station for the state 7-on-7 tournament. So we're going to try to make this quick here. Wrapping it up real quick, Mike. Let's look at the football side of the things, the Texas side of the things, with the quarterback room really starting to stack up, with the Longhorns having Hudson Card, Quinn Ewers, Malik Murphy, the early enrollee true freshman. They still have Charles Wright on campus. Now they have the commitment of Arch Manning, which was their number one target. That's a loaded recruiting, or excuse me, quarterback room that Steve Sarkisian is going to have to handle. How do you see the best case scenario for Steve Sarkisian and managing the talent that he does have and keeping them engaged, on the roster?
It's going to be tough, and that's part of like managing a quarterback room in today's college football. I mean, I think that you have to expect probably at least two of those bodies to be gone at some point the next time the portal is really available. And I think Arch just being a commit helps a little bit because he's not there yet. From what I know, I'm trying to recall. I'm not sure. Some of those private schools don't allow kids to graduate early, so I'm trying to recall if Arch is planning to be an early enrollee or not. I would assume he is if he can. But when he gets on campus in the spring, that's when it'll really, I think, start to meet out, or it could be in the winter portal. I think we'd expect to see probably at least two names go in. I mean, it's just there's one ball to go around, and I think a lot of guys will see the writing on the wall. And if you're Steve Sarkisian, there's not much you can do. The answer, and what I think Texas is doing, is to stack as much talent as you can in that room so that when there is attrition, you've got guys that you can go to and feel good about.
Absolutely. Huge, huge day for Texas football. Mike, before I let you go, anything else that you think is relevant to add to this discussion?
I think, I've talked to several sources at Texas over the last month who've said, if we can get Arch end of June like we think we can, this thing will take off. And I think that you could see us have 18 commits by the end of July. And so if that's the case, it could be a very busy month. So stay locked into Horns 24/7.
Absolutely. For all of the latest Texas recruiting and team news, head on over to Horns 24/7. Mike, really, really appreciate you joining us, and really appreciate all of our viewers and listeners for jumping on with us for this live emergency edition of Horns 24/7 YouTube video with the nation's number one overall prospect, 5-star quarterback Arch Manning, making his commitment to Texas. As Mike said, go stay locked over at Horns 24/7 for all of the latest recruiting news. You have a feeling that this is going to be lead to a very, very heavy, positive heavy, I think, month for Texas football. So for Mike Roach, I am Taylor Estes. We will talk to y'all later.